This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Welcome to the Friday morning break with John Gibbs on Teachers Talk Radio. My guest this week, Jackie Cornish. We're going to discuss the decision she made with their daughter Phoebe to homeschool. Not a decision they wanted, but one she felt she was forced to make.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
This morning on Teachers Talk Radio, my guest is Jackie Cornish, and we're going to hear about her daughter Phoebe's transition from primary school to secondary school, and a decision they had to make to homeschool Phoebe. As her story unfolds, I think there'll be a variety of feelings from teachers, head teachers, and other parents. Some, I think, will recognise this story. It's not uncommon these days. It might be that similar dilemmas are faced by other parents, and indeed teachers may recognise some of the description. It's possible you may see things quite differently. However you view Jackie's story and her decision and her reaction to the school, I think it raises a number of very important questions about the kinds of school we have in this country, about choice, about empowerment, and about listening to students, and the decisions schools are making. I think it will allow us all to reflect thoughtfully on the state of education today. So welcome back, and it's Friday morning and it's Teachers Talk Radio. And as you will know, if you've been listening to this show over the last few weeks, you'll know that I'm exploring what schools are for. And with the help of guests, some academics, some writers and so on, and lots of teachers and parents, we've talked about schools, and some of the trends that have emerged led me in the direction of my guest today. And one of the things that emerged was the increasing prevalence of what you might call hyper-discipline in schools. Something about the arrival of uniforms, the effects of lockdown, and also the type of school. We talked about Mossbourne in the past, and we've talked about the Michaela Academy, and schools that sell themselves, in a sense, on being super strict. Now, I saw online a letter from my guest today, Jackie, who had written about a very moving letter about her daughter and her experiences of transition from primary school to secondary school, and then a decision to go, because of her experiences in primary school, to go to homeschooling. And it just seemed exactly relevant to what I've been talking about lately. So welcome to Jackie, my guest this week. So, Jackie, thank you so much for joining me on Teachers Talk Radio this morning. And let's start with your daughter Phoebe and how she found the transition from primary school to secondary school, and the kind of student she was in primary school and how she anticipated going on to secondary school.
Okay. Phoebe absolutely loved primary school. We were at a very relatively small primary school with one class per year group. She was there, right through from reception up to year 6, as was my son. She was a very keen learner. We had amazing parents' evenings where genuinely the teachers couldn't say enough good things about her. She was on the Gifted and Talented programme and would represent school at science fairs or other sort of multi-school events, and she was often kind of the one that would be chosen as the narrator for the school play or the Easter service, and often had her work displayed in the corridor. She loved school. She was an avid follower of rules, and they had a lot of fun at school. It was an amazing primary school with a fantastic head teacher who very much had the children's happiness at the heart of how he ran the school, really. Still achieving all the things he needed to achieve, but really he was interested in the children's well-being and that they were happy in school.
Yeah. And what sort of subjects did she like at primary school? You mentioned science. Was that something she enjoyed?
Yeah, she loved science. There was a fantastic science teacher in the school who was, well, her year 5 teacher, who was also very passionate about science. She loved to write. And so really kind of science and English. English was a real kind of passion of hers.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The 3-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
And you're listening to the Friday morning break on Teachers Talk Radio with John Gibbs. My guest this week, Jackie Cornish, and we're describing her daughter Phoebe's experience in the transition from primary to secondary school and the realisation that school was becoming an obstacle to Phoebe's education, and the difficult decision they took to home educate. So she was in year 6 and she's enjoying school. Yes. And yes. You've got a choice of secondary schools, or did you say, well, there's not really there's the school pretty good school we'll send to? How difficult was it to choose the transition that people often worry about to secondary school?
Yeah, we've got 2 schools locally, and our son, who is 3 school years ahead, we had chosen not the immediate feeder school for him, but a different one, still very close to us. That's a really nice. One of the things is it's a lovely cycle to school, all off road. So that was kind of quite important to us. And the school had a really good reputation. We were starting to see some of the schools really kind of step up their behaviour policies, and they're kind of conforming. So we heard sort of talks of certain schools that you weren't allowed to speak in the corridor, for example, or you could only walk one way, and it just felt a bit regimented. And when we went to the school for my son to look at it, there seemed to be just the level of creativity that was encouraged and individuality, and that's why we chose it for him. And they also did a brilliant programme in the first in September, when all the Year 7 start. They take over 100 of them to a residential activity centre so that they can sort of get to know each other, and they do that in week 3. So it felt quite unusual, but felt really positive. And he had a really positive kind of, first sort of 2.5, 3 years. So it was the obvious choice for her to go to that school.
Right. So how many years ahead was your son of your daughter?
He's 3 years.
3 years ahead. So no reason to think it would probably be the same. She would go off to secondary school. Right. So she goes. In fact, it's during the lockdown off to secondary school. How did the school make arrangements for that during the early stages of the lockdown? The secondary school, that is.
The secondary school. So one of the things that she was really looking forward to was she sort of had, much as she loved primary school, she'd outgrown it, and she was really keen to learn. So one of the things about going to secondary school is the excitement around kind of going to your history lesson in the history room, and then being grown up and kind of changing teacher and changing classroom and heading to the maths corridor or the English corridor. So there was a lot of excitement about that. But what it meant was, because of lockdown, that actually each year group was restricted to its own bubble and its own area of the school. So every year group had their own entrance, their own corridor. The teachers visited them in that corridor. They didn't. The kids didn't move about at all. So instantly, it was not what she was expecting.
How did your daughter react to this? I mean, how did she feel about school?
I mean, we were very fortunate over lockdown. We didn't have a lot of challenges to deal with over lockdown. So we were kind of in the fortunate group of people when my husband and I got furloughed and the kids were at home and had enough space and could do their work. So we didn't experience the stress that a lot of people did. But so she kind of just sort of bumbled along with it. Was what it was, really. She wasn't too worried about it.
Because one of the things I know when we talked before, and one of the things the school presented, was that because students had been sort of de-schoolised, they'd been de-socialised out of school routines, that they needed to change when they came back after lockdown. How did you feel? Did you feel that your daughter was losing impetus towards school, or there was a sense in which she wouldn't want to go back? Or
No, not at all. She was very keen to go back. I think that the bit that you're referring to is actually a little bit further down the line when the school behaviour policy started to. So when we started to experience problems with Phoebe's behaviour in school and our relationship with school, and I ended up, and also our son a little bit. And I think what happened is the school introduced a new behaviour policy, but they didn't announce to the parents that the behaviour policy was new, or they implemented a new behaviour policy. So what happened was we started getting sort of quite a lot of feedback about our son's behaviour and subsequently Phoebe's, and we thought, well, this is not good enough, kids. We need to sort this out. Like, how have we gone from getting in no trouble to all of a sudden getting into trouble? But then what happened was a group of my son's friends' mums, we kind of got in a WhatsApp group together, and through chatting, we realised that we were all in exactly the same boat. So then we thought, well, they're all friends. Maybe they're all getting into trouble together. But then it became apparent that I can't remember how it came out, but that there was a new approach to behaviour management in the school, but the parents hadn't been told, it hadn't been announced. So the kids couldn't really, it wasn't that they were behaving any differently, it's that there were different expectations on their behaviour. So there was more reporting of poor behaviour, not a change in their behaviour. And so I had written a letter to the head teacher and the governors about this, just about the degree to which the behaviour policy had changed and how we were feeling about it. And I went for a meeting with the head teacher, who told me the reason behind the introduction of the new behaviour management kind of process and policy was that they were finding broadly across the school that lots of young people who had been obviously unengaged during the pandemic, and they had lost sort of touch with them, and that she sort of said that young people had kind of forgotten how to interact at school, how to engage, that you have to go to school every day, and they weren't really kind of ready to learn. So this introduction was about kind of re-engaging and getting all the kids back on track into school mode.
So in a timescale sense, the lockdown finished, and it was a little after this that you noticed first your son is getting into trouble at school and coming home with, I presume, detentions. What form did the trouble that he was getting into take?
I've just remembered something else that was a red flag as well around this time. If you can remember a kind of post-pandemic, when all that was going on, obviously children's well-being and stuff was at the heart of everyone's concern and that kind of thing. And when they went back to school after maybe the second lockdown, so the autumn, the school wrote sort of saying, they'll be coming back next week, and it said that week they would be introducing pastoral check-ins in the morning.
Right, yes.
So that every person coming into school, there would be a pastoral check-in daily kind of thing as they came into school. And I thought that was amazing, and thought, isn't that brilliant that they're checking on their well-being as they come into school? It wasn't a pastoral check-in. Yeah. It was an equipment and uniform check. So not once did either of my children during that pastoral check-in ever have any kind of well-being check, if you like. It was a check that they were ready to learn. So that's a phrase that seems to be used quite a lot, which, whether ready to learn is whether they've got the right colour pens, whether they're dressed appropriately, whether they've got the right equipment, as well as whether their attitude is ready to learn. So because ready to learn have lots and lots of elements of it, it was quite easy to not be, in their eyes, ready to learn. So the sanctions for that could be anything from an after-school detention for perhaps not done homework, or the reset system, which used to be called isolation in our particular school, and was then referred to as reset. So that was what was introduced and used probably from autumn of 2020, but increasingly so over the next few years.
Yeah, so this is presented to you later when you inquire about this as necessary because kids weren't ready to get back to learning, and yet they call it this rather euphemism, but pastoral check-in. It's how you're getting on, kind of thing. But really, it's, have you got a pen? Have you got rulers? Have you got your geometry set? Have you got your games kit?
Yeah.
Is it uniform as well? Are you uniformed properly and all that stuff?
I've got black socks on, and shirt tucked in and all that. And there were a few odd things that really that came to me to write this letter to the head teacher. For example, my daughter had been in a Spanish lesson, and the whole class were working. The teacher was fully controlling the lesson, and all of a sudden, one of the senior leadership team opened the door of the Spanish room, interrupted the class, and said, "Right, everybody up, random uniform check." And everybody had to stand up and check. And it was, there were things like that were just a little bit twitchy. They just was like, that was odd. And I also discovered around the same time, I had been told, I don't have evidence of this, but I understand that scripts had been introduced for the teachers as well around the wording to be used. For example, if the skirt wasn't uniform length, or if the right equipment wasn't had. So it was a kind of new policy that the staff were being introduced to, as well as the pupils. Yeah, culture shift all at the same time.
Because I've had experience of that in my own teaching career, where teachers were issued at a school I was at some years ago with exactly, as you say, small plastic cards, which were a series of prompts to say, if you see a student doing this, how you were supposed to address them and how you're supposed to talk to them. Well, I mean, so scripts for the teachers, random checks, and basically an inspection in the mornings, as and this is what's happening. And how did they react if someone say, I mean, was it a reminder, well, tomorrow make sure you've got a pen, or was it immediately some sort of sanction? Or
I think I do remember with total clarity, but I do know that it ended up where if you didn't have it, you had to go to reset, because you may have got one warning. Can't remember. I don't want to say it's 100%.
Right.
But I don't remember the exact details. There was basically what was introduced, and I don't know if the school ever called it zero tolerance, but that's what I think. You've got one thing in like per class that you could do, like say you haven't got your pen, and then if it was another thing, you'd get sent to reset. And reset was a 24-hour thing. So if you committed your wrongdoing of not having a pen or whatever, or whatever, not at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, that would require you to stay under the reset kind of rules till 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, including after school detention, lunchtime break sanctions. So you're in there for the whole period, the whole 24 hours. Obviously not when you're at home.
right, and so this is what's happening to your son. First of all, he's getting sanctioned, or you're getting messages from the school that he's been sent to reset for various things.
He kind of managed to nip that in the bud fairly quickly. He was going into year 10, and he's a different child to Zidi,
Right.
and we kind of were just sort of get your head down, you're in your GCSEs now, just head down, get on with it. But the problem was that when he started to get into trouble, and we had similar with Phoebe, what happened was the relationship broke down at home, because there was an app, which I'm sure lots of schools use, an app to communicate with parents, which messages could be sent on. And then, of course, they've also got our phone numbers, and they've also got our emails. So I would be sort of bombarded, it felt like, with either an app message, an email, or a text message, or multiple versions of the same message, with a kind of, Dylan's done this, he's in reset, Dylan hasn't done his homework, so he's got detention or whatever. So what happens is, if you've had a child for whom you've not had many behavioural issues with, and all of a sudden you start getting this, then when your child comes home from school, then you're not very happy with their behaviour, and you let them know so. So it started, and it was a bit the same with Phoebe as well, really, because as far as we were concerned, their behaviour was not good enough. We're not, as parents, we're not in any way anti-school. As I've said, I was a school governor. I'm a avid rule follower, is in my nature, and I'm not really like confrontational or one to buck the system. And I've always aimed to be really supportive of the school, and very much if the kids have got homework to do, if there's a uniform thing to be followed, then the school have my support with that wholeheartedly. So when we started being contacted about behaviour and homework and things like that, and the fact that we just thought, God, they must be being, really naughty, and this isn't good enough. So then they were obviously both quite defensive about this, and it kind of really impacted our family dynamic, because my husband and I were always cross with them because the school were contacting us to say about behaviour, and the kids always were feeling that it wasn't fair.
Right. In a sense, you sort of solved it with your son, in a sense that he's going into year 10, he's got his GCSEs coming up, and the message, whatever the rules are, this is what the school's got to do. You do this. And then, so what was the experience your daughter had when she came out of lockdown? She's back in school.
Yeah, so she started to feel a little bit overwhelmed in some of her lessons. She was finding the classroom quite a stressful environment. She was finding, she was just feeling a bit kind of overwhelmed with the school environment, with friendships, relationships, understanding the dynamics of it all. And then she would get into trouble. So, for example, one day she arrived in the classroom and she didn't have her jumper on, and she should have had her jumper on. She only had her shirt and tie on. And so her warning was for arriving in the classroom without her jumper on. So then she reached to her bag during the lesson to get the jumper and put it on, and then that was the second offence, if you like, because she was rummaging in her bag. So then that was distracting, so she got sent to reset. for that.
Right.
And then there just became a series of things like that. And I had a chat with Phoebe this morning before coming on this interview to just understand from her perspective if she knew what went wrong, where it went wrong, and that kind of thing. And I said, do you know why, when you started to struggle in the school system? And she said, when there was rules at primary school, all of the rules made sense. They were like, I don't know, don't run in the corridors. Made sense because that could be dangerous, or you could run into someone, or I don't know, don't talk when the teacher's talking makes sense because it's disrespect. But she really needs to understand why certain rules exist. And what she started to struggle with was, she didn't feel she didn't feel respected by the adults in the school, and she didn't understand. She couldn't conform to a rule that didn't make sense to her. But what she said was there was no room or no allowance or no provision for you to be able to question a rule. And she found the rules really confusing. So there was this thing about not being allowed to speak, if you like, but then, and when you do speak, then kind of being told that you're back chatting or whatever. So not understanding what you're meant to do, asking what you're meant to do, still not understanding, asking a friend and then being told off for speaking and then saying, but I wasn't speaking, I was asking about instructions for the task, and then being told that you're back chatting. So she found herself in a real pickle about just not ever being able to, like, just constantly being in trouble for not being able. So then she started to resist the rules, and I suppose going to a defence. She just felt unable to exist in a system that she didn't understand. She needed it to be explained to her why certain rules existed, and no explanations were ever really given, and they weren't really allowed to ask for an explanation.
And when she explains this, when she comes home and she says, look, I said this, and then the teacher said, well, that's being disrespectful or something, or that's your second warning. How did you react at first? Was it the same with your son? You said, look, this is what you got to do. This is the school. You got to do this stuff. Yeah.
And what has become apparent over increasing period of time, the more trouble that she got in, the worse her behaviour, if you like, was. And her behaviour wasn't challenging in so much as she just wanted to disengage. So she would leave a classroom, she would feel overwhelmed and would leave a classroom. She would, if she was sent to a reset and she didn't think that she should have been, then she would not cope very well with that. So, yeah, I suppose she went into kind of shutdown and defence, really, and a bit of kind of fight and flight at the same time. You know, she just felt...
But I was wondering, when you said that earlier, you know, that this changed the dynamic at home. Initially, I guess this is causing a problem for you and your daughter. Because you're coming into conflict at home over this.
Yeah, exactly. In the first instance, we were like, pull socks up, just get on with it, do as you're told. Yeah. And actually, I regret that I didn't give her more benefit of doubt in the first place, but it wasn't till, as I say, speaking to other parents, that I realised that this wasn't necessarily about the kids.
And so this got to a point where it's gone beyond simply she's getting in trouble quite a bit, and you're saying, well, you got to deal with this. There's a turning point where you think, well, something's got to be done. So how did you approach the school when you decided you needed to intervene?
So I asked on numerous occasions if there was some more wellbeing support she could have. I knew she was struggling, and I knew that she wasn't happy and that she needed some support. And I asked the school to help with that. But again, speaking to her this morning, what she went to 2 schools because we changed school in the end. But what she says about that is that it was kind of yes, there's this wellbeing support available, but in reality, it wasn't available. They were even, wellbeing people had too many people to see, or she was just told to sort of get back to class. Phoebe's very articulate and she's very high functioning, and because of that, I don't think it was recognised that she potentially had a problem. I think that the impression I very much got from both schools that she went to was that Phoebe is more than able to change her behaviour, and she needs to rein it in and get her head down. She's a bright girl, she can do really well, but she needs to conform and be better.
And so you made the decision to change schools.
Yeah, the relationship broke. She got suspended from school she got sent to reset for something that she said she didn't do. The teacher came to reset and said, I apologise, you're right, I got the wrong person, it wasn't you. However, you're going to remain in reset for the manner in which you left the classroom, which I think was that she flounced out of the classroom. She then got sent to reset, and then the next day, she was told that you could have this system where they could sort of appeal to your reset. So she went in the next morning, but was told no, she couldn't appeal it. She just had to stay in there. So again, she didn't have an opportunity she felt unheard. So she left reset, refused to go and walked around school, and then was suspended, sent home on the Friday afternoon. She wasn't allowed back in school until she had a reintegration meeting, which was the following Tuesday, which I had to attend with her. This is after a half-day suspension. I attended while... The other thing going alongside of this is the tech I mentioned doesn't all work. It's not reliable. So, for example, I'm sat outside the person I'm meeting's office, and I get a text message from school saying, "Why isn't your daughter in school?" when I'm in school with her at a meeting. So it's kind of those sorts of things that are happening all the time as well.
Okay.
It didn't really help.
Yeah.
So we went to the school, and we went to the meeting, and we couldn't resolve it. By this point, we'd applied for another school. We couldn't resolve it because they were happy to have her back. They were happy to say that she shouldn't have, that initially she shouldn't have been in reset. But the system is, if you are suspended, you have to spend a whole day in internal inclusion before you can go back into your lessons. And she refused to go to internal inclusion for a day. And I wasn't prepared to, I supported her. So we left school that day and we didn't go back. We waited for a place to come up at the new school, which she then moved to in the, just before the summer holidays of year 8. So she would have started there properly in year 9 in the new school.
And so what was the, I'm sorry, I'm just amazed by the use of words here. So what was the difference between reset and internal inclusion?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't know, but she wasn't going to go.
No,
don't know what it was.
I'd love to know.
That's part of the challenge, isn't it? Like, as a parent, you're trying to keep up with which of these things. You've got suspension, exclusion,
yes,
internal exclusion.
And the wonderful double speak of you're basically being stopped from joining in the school by being sent to inclusion. Well, never mind. So she goes on to the new school. And how did that work out?
Disaster. So she, when all of this was going on and the relationship with school was breaking down and she was not really wanting to go, I had offered for her to be home educated, but she wanted to be in school. So we found another school and they accepted her. But unfortunately, there were some things that I think that school could have done better. But I think she was broken by the time that she got there. And it was the experience of everything that she'd been through. And we'd been asking for help. I'd started to have suspicions around this time that she might have some kind of autism traits. And I've been asking for help. And I've been saying to teachers in all the schools, like, please believe this is not, there is something behind this behaviour. But anyway, we didn't kind of get anywhere with that during the school. And I think at that school, she just never really felt like she settled in. She had a really good relationship with 2 staff who were responsible for safeguarding and well-being, I think. But they both left. She formed a really good relationship with them, but they both left at quite short notice. and the other teachers in the school just had her. The deputy head said that what they were witnessing was puberty. Her behaviour was down to puberty. They've seen it before, and I just felt that it wasn't. And then she started missing so much school. She wouldn't go. And then a friend of mine, I saw something that she'd written on Facebook, and it said, why do we make school refusal? Why do we see that as the child's problem? Why don't we consider that a child refusing to go to school is just their gut is telling them that it's not safe for them to be there? They're not refusing because they don't fancy school or they don't like the idea of it. Their whole being is telling them that they shouldn't be there and it's not safe for them. And I thought that was really interesting, and it was around that time that I really started. It's a
powerful challenge as well to us, to all the education profession to think about, is that is the increase in school exclusions, suspensions, and school refusing. Well, okay, there's lockdown and so on, but there's also a sense in which something is very wrong with schools if it isn't a place that students want to go to, and young people want to go to.
And I asked her today, I said, did you feel safe in school? She said, I wasn't safe in school. She felt, and I've asked her this morning, she felt alone. She was vulnerable. She had no one to turn to. It wasn't, she couldn't be there. It wasn't, so she would refuse to go. And because I'm a rule follower, I was getting increasingly stressed about her attendance. I wasn't getting any support from the school to work with me on it, really. But as I say, with the second school, I don't hold them really responsible for that. I think it was a bit too far down the line for her. I realised that she was. It just kind of slowly dawned on me that she was under such stress that going to school was such a stressful, damaging thing for her to do day in, day out, that we just, for her own mental health, which was really suffering, we had to take her out of school. We had to do something. We had to remove her for her own well-being. And one of the phrase that I used was that we realised that school was getting in the way of her education, and that was the most crazy realisation that dawned on us, is that we had to get her out, because otherwise I don't really like to think where it would have ended, because her mental health was absolutely rock bottom.
Right. And this is a good place actually to move to the second part of this interview discussion. So we'll take a short break for the Teachers Talk Radio news.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingssolutionsuk.co.uk.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out! Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
In higher education news, the BBC reports on the 5,000 students who have brought claims against University College London over the quality of teaching provided during the pandemic. The news website reports that the trial will move to the start of 2026 and will likely be the first, although current and former students from other universities are also seeking compensation. The lead claimant against UCL began his campaign for compensation while still a student, studying for a master's between 2020 and 2021. He told the BBC he paid £14,000 for his international politics degree, which ended up being solely online. He is suing UCL because he says he did not get what he paid for. Test cases will be identified in November, although lawyers representing the students said they would welcome sensible settlement proposals from UCL so that this matter does not proceed to trial. A spokesperson for UCL said the university had prioritised health and safety of the community and followed UK government guidance throughout the pandemic. The Standard covers Eton's plans to ban smartphones for the next academic year. From September, the school will issue boys with a phone that can only be used to make calls and send texts. Eton follows several other private schools who have made similar decisions and are urging parents to only buy smartphones if absolutely necessary. The Eton rules apply to pupils who are aged 13 and in their first year at the school. A letter sent to parents of new boarders said that any smartphone should be taken home after its SIM card was transferred to the school-issued simple handset. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says he's not in favour of simply banning phones for under 16s. In May, a committee of MPs said the new government should consider a ban within its first year because of what it called serious dangers posed to children. The PM said there was a serious question to be asked about what content children can access and how it could be controlled, but that a ban wasn't a practical way forward. Sir Keir was speaking on ITV's Good Morning Britain and said he would sit down with anyone to look at how to put better protections in place. He avoided questions about his own children's use of smartphones, saying he wanted to keep them out of political discussions of any kind. BBC News reports on a review commissioned by Reading Borough Council following the death of head teacher Ruth Perry. The review criticised a culture of high-stakes accountability that led to the public condemnation of individuals. The review included conversations with Mrs Perry's colleagues and governors at the primary school she led, as well as the head teachers and council officers in the local area. There were also meetings with the family of Mrs Perry. The review concluded that what happened to Mrs Perry showed the folly of the macho culture of high-stakes accountability. It also recommends the local authority support calls for Ofsted to scrap its one-word judgments. Mrs Perry's sister, Professor Julie Waters, said she welcomed the call for the council to join the campaign, but said the review goes very lightly on the local authority. Ofsted will publish a review later this summer. Finally, Ireland's RTE focuses on Queen's University Belfast's recognition of the support role pets play in educational attainment. 25 animals took part in a special graduation ceremony following the main summer graduations. Queen's said the gesture is based on research that shows the important degree of support animals can provide as study buddies. Dogs, cats and a hamster took to the red carpet for the informal ceremony, with plenty of puns in the awards, which included a doctorate and a certificate. The university said research has shown that time spent with pets can improve concentration levels and lower stress, two things that are important when studying. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
You're listening to the Friday Morning Break with John Gibbs on Teachers Talk Radio. My guest this week, Jackie Quach. She's discussing her decision to homeschool her daughter Phoebe when she felt the school was becoming an obstacle to her daughter's education. Jackie, so you decided to homeschool.
Yeah, we've been thinking about home education for a while because obviously at the first school it looked a bit like we might move that towards that, but so it'd been sort of simmering. I hadn't really done much about it. All I had done was research and learn that I could do it, that we could do it, that we could just say to the school, we're deregistering and we're taking responsibility for our child's education. It was terrifying as a rule follower, and it's not just your own thing, how you explain it to family, how you explain it to friends, whether you'd be doing the right thing for your child. I had to explain it to my son, who was horrified. He thought we were making it absolute, because his experience at school, was different. He was a different person. And we had to turn everything that we thought we knew about school and parenting on its head because it wasn't working, and we knew. And my husband was resistant, he was not sure. And I had to say to him, please, could you trust me? Just trust me that this will be better for Phoebe. And he did, thankfully, trust me to take it on I'm a project manager by trade, so I'm used to learning new things and juggling and making things happen. And we deregistered and then realised that, we kind of needed to come up with a plan. So it wasn't thought out in terms of a plan before, but I knew we'd have a plan. January 23, we started our home education journey.
So that's the beginning of what would have been the beginning of year 9? Or was that the beginning of year 10?
Halfway through year 9.
Halfway through year 9. And how's it worked? I mean, what are the practical problems you've had to overcome and how's it working?
I knew I wouldn't be able to teach Phoebe. One of the main reasons that I can't teach Phoebe is because she's actually really intelligent and knows an awful lot. She knows an awful lot about an awful lot of things more than I do. So I knew that it was going to be a challenge to teach her. I knew that her school experience had completely put her off all the things that she used to thrive on. So she loved being orderly, she loved being organised, she loved being given work, she loved a timetable. All of those things she no longer wanted anything to do with at all. So we started off with a lot of trial and error, a lot of falling out of me using things like Seneca or Sparks, Maths, any of those things, and putting together timetables of how much Maths, English, science she'd do every week and what she was going to do, and it's a complete disaster. Lots of tears on both sides, lots of arguing, but what became apparent was that she didn't want to use any of those platforms that reminded her of her school experience. The longer that she was off school, the more we realised how traumatised or how how much she needed to rest so we very much had to kind of sit with it for a while and let her recover, because it had been a horrific year of just, constant arguing and getting in trouble with school and trying to make her go to school, and these sort of messages that, from school constantly of you're not good enough, your child's not good enough, it's all our problem that things are not working out for Phoebe. We should be trying harder, or she should be a better person. So we kind of bumbled through the first bit, just letting her kind of have some time out, but also very aware that, this ought to thing that kind of looms over you. She ought to be doing this, she should be doing that.
I was going to say, it must have been a very miserable time. I mean, I can't...
Well, it wasn't, because once you removed the thing that was actually in the way of our relationship and in the way of her learning, which is the school bit of the triangle, and it just becomes a two-way, just you and your child working it out between you without this other influence of this third player that doesn't really know your child. And I think it was Naomi Fisher said recently, it was Naomi Fisher said, it's really an odd thing that we should turn up to parents' evening and ask our teachers how our children are doing, and why isn't it the teacher that says to the parents, how are they doing? Because we know our children and we actually know how they're doing, because we spend all our time with them. And it's interesting that we go to a parents' evening and ask the teacher how our child's doing, and not the other way around. It was such a relief. It was such a relief to not have to answer to anybody else, to not have to battle, to ring up school every day and say she's not coming in, to not have to apologise for her behaviour or what they deem to be bad, to just not be answerable to only to be answerable between myself and my husband of what we thought that she should be doing. And then we fell out with Phoebe about it, but it's a parent-child relationship. There's going to be some kickback and resistance. So
it's a struggle, and there's ups and downs. But you're in charge of this. It's something you're trying to solve.
Yeah, the relief was immense. The relief of being out of the system was the impact on both our and my mental health was significant of removing ourselves from that situation. But with a sadness that this is a child who left primary school and who any of her primary school teachers and us would have put as a straight A student. Like, she would fly, she'll go to secondary school, she'll do amazing, she'll get top marks in all her stuff, and and all of a sudden that kind of collapsed around her. So around that time, it became apparent that it became clear that I wasn't going to be able to teach her. And so I sort of set about project managing her education. And that meant researching and putting together different things that she could choose from. So I scour the internet and find, for example, it's a really good provider of home ed learning, and they did I think they're called Live, Laugh, Learn, and they did like an online history of fashion course. So she did that, and then she would do kind of other things that she would dip in and out of. But her heart wasn't really in it. But truthfully, she wasn't doing a lot this time, but she was doing a lot of sleeping and a lot of recovering. And then I discovered the local, it's not that local, but it's an hour and a half by bus and train, college that does a home ed course for years 10 and 11. And I mentioned it to her, and she was really keen, loved the idea of going to college. She's always preferred being with older young people and the kind of environment where she could wear her own clothes without uniform, and she could come and go and make her own way there and be independent and grown up. And she was accepted onto the home ed course, and she was accepted in about February to start the following September. So I knew that her maths, English and science would be covered. That in year 10 and 11, she would do maths, English and biology, and that would be sorted. So I didn't need to worry about those, because those were the ones that were kind of on my mind as being, what
Right, yeah.
And then I said to her, look, how about this coming summer? Do you want to do a GCSE? Do you want to give it a go? This is for summer 23, like 3 months later. So she went. She said yeah, and she decided to enter history and RE GCSE. So in the summer of year 9, she had 3 months to more or less self-teach the history and RE. She had some tutor time as well, like online tutoring.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, she didn't put enough work in, but it gave her something to feel like she was doing. So instead of learning the whole curriculum, she sort of tried to learn it from revision books. But, and I wasn't sure what would happen. Her history, she got a 3. She got 2 marks off a 4, which is a pretty good. For a couple of months' work, I think it wasn't bad. And she learned a lot about how she really needed to work harder and do more. And her RE, she got a 5, which was amazing. So she did too.
Really?
This
Yeah.
is a child that the school is saying that she's not interested in learning, she's whatever. And then within 3 months, she's managed to get herself, to put herself in for 2 GCSEs and learn a significant amount of it. And attend an exam centre, 30 miles away and sit an exam, which I think is pretty incredible from what she'd been through. Also, around that time, she started volunteering at a gymnastics club, which was actually at the second school she went to, and they'd asked her to help. She went to a gym club there, and then they'd asked her to help. So she started volunteering once a week there. So she was going back to the second school to volunteer, which again I think shows quite a lot of character and resilience to walk back into that school at the end of school day, kind of every week.
The common theme of what you're saying is really she's choosing and navigating her way with your help, with your advice, and so on. She's travelling across town. She's going to a club she wants to go to, and managing.
Yeah, really independent, and that's why it was good that she, this college that's an hour and a half away for her. Didn't matter. It was an hour and a half. She gets to get a train. She gets to get a bus. She gets to, be independent, which is what she wanted. So she's currently in year 10. She goes to college 3 days a week, where she does maths, English, science, and she also does a vocational day there of the 3 days. One of them's vocational, so she's just done a sports leadership NVQ, and then from next September she'll go into year 11, where she'll finish her English, maths and science. She'll do another NVQ, but she's also, I said, so last year she did the history and RE, and I said, we're going to carry on with the home ed. You need to be thinking what you want to do this year. So she's literally just sat business studies and Spanish at a private exam centre this summer, so she will pass those. That's another 2 in the bag. And then next year she'll do her English, maths and science and another one. So she will have sort of 7 GCSEs of probably grade 5 or above. Her volunteering has turned into paid work, so she's paid and has qualified as a level 1 gymnastics coach. And she is about to go next month to Spain on a young person's volunteering programme. She'll travel to Madrid on her own and be met there, where she will spend 8 days on a summer camp for Spanish young people, teaching them English.
And that is it's a lovely sort of happy ending to this story in a way, because it's really a classic narrative of you reached a point where you thought, oh my goodness, what's happening here? And things are falling out of control. And it's got to this point where if she were at school and looking at those kind of results, you'd be quite pleased. So that's fine. She's doing well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it has been a success. It's just been very traumatic, and it's been a real learning curve. And she's had to go through an awful lot. And as parents, we've had to go through an awful lot, and we have felt very lonely and very isolated and very unsupported in the whole process. I do partly hold schools responsible, but I also appreciate the massive amount of pressure that they're under, the degree of mental health and well-being and social emotional health of the young people that they're supporting. I understand all the other issues that schools are facing regarding, attendance and behaviour and all of that. But I just feel that she could have been more nurtured, and that I feel that the adults, if I'm honest, I feel that adults could have been kinder.
Yes, I mean, someone listening to this, before this started, if I'd said, well, I'm talking to someone who's homeschooling, because they'll say, well, is it that your daughter was simply being adolescent? But you've addressed that in a sense. You weren't the kind of parent who was what they call the helicopter parent, hanging over the student, watching everything they do. In a sense, you tried at first to make this system through the school work very, very determinedly.
Your point about, is this like, is it just about adolescence, or is it about something else? And I think even if does it matter if it's just adolescence? What are we teaching our young people? That being an adolescent means you can't question the why, and you can't, that there is. We expect in adolescence, you want to push the boundaries, and you want to be able to. It's what young people do, isn't it? We've all done it, but it's like there's flex in that push. So the questions, the whys that we would ask as young people, that we would go, but why can't I? Why? There's no two-way conversation around why not. It's just no. So I think that's where it doesn't really matter if it's adolescence or not. I think we need to be allowing young people to understand and to input into the to the school culture. And I think where there are schools where, everybody knows that attendance and exclusions, none of us want the kids to be excluded. None of us want the kids to not be attending. We need kids in school to receive a decent and supportive and high quality educational experience. And if they're not attending, then they can't get that. But if they're not attending, then we need to have the systems in place that enable them to feel safe, to feel that they're valued and that they're wanted in school, and that the part that they have to play is important, and that they matter and they're not invisible, and that they're cared about. And I think is a kind of divide in the schools that create that real strong nurture environment where young people thrive and feel safe, and schools that have a more zero tolerance approach where young people feel scared and like they don't fit and they're not good enough. Oh yeah,
and the defenders of the zero tolerance high discipline schools will say they have great results, or that all sorts of students enjoy the security. The students enjoy the security that it provides, and safety, and so on. Well, of course, there will be students who will thrive under those circumstances. There's no room to be different. There's no room to be a teenager and to be awkward. Yeah. My daughters both went to secondary school in an age, when I look back on it now, when they were a very progressive sort of school, very relaxed. And I remember one day my daughter coming home saying, "I didn't do PE today." I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Well, I just refused to do it. They were doing a game I didn't like." And she thought it was a sort of game which was very rough and tumble. She said, "It's just an excuse for the boys to throw things at the girls." Yeah. And she told the teacher, "I'm not doing it." And the teacher said, "All right."
Because she had choice, and she was empowered to make a decision, absolutely, about something that she felt comfortable or not about. And I think, I also think it kind of, we don't trust some schools. We don't trust young people's gut feeling. We don't trust that they know what's best for them sometimes. So there was a real kind of thinking among the adults that I came into contact with at the schools that Phoebe was ruining her future. She had no aspirations. She was throwing her life away. Well, this is a child who, since she's been out of school, has started college, done 4 GCSEs by the end of year 10. She's been to a college open evening on her own, a few weeks ago to speak to the local college nearest to us to see what she can do in year 12 when she's not even year 11, to check what GCSE she needs to do the 3 A levels in politics, law and RE that she wants to do, to check if she needs to do another GCSE off her own back next year. And she's done all that without, and yet she was kind of ignored and kind of looked over as just pain, really, just awkward, challenging, and it's all part of experimenting and risk and exploring and to making a wrong move, but being supported when you make that wrong move to really explore what went wrong and how you can avoid doing that next time.
Jackie, thank you so much for this. It's such an interesting account you've given, and we're coming to the end now. So as you look forward to the future, you've mentioned it already that your daughter's thinking of the 6th form and she's planning to be successful and so on. And your son as well, he's doing very well. So looking back on it, what do you think was the most difficult thing you overcame when you were looking at homeschooling?
I think the most difficult thing was that this is okay, that we're allowed to do this, and that we can actually, I'm trying to kind of articulate it really, that actually we know what's best for our children, and we know that home education is what's best for Phoebe, and she's thriving as a result of it. And just to be that being bold and making that decision was the right thing to do. The sad thing is people often say, "Oh, you're really brave and you're really lucky to be able to home educate," and it never felt brave and it never felt lucky. We had no other choice. We were at the end. We felt like all our options had gone. The only choice we felt we had was to remove her from education for her own mental health and well-being. Sorry, that was a very succinct.
No, that was great. Thank you so much for that. I think that's an important point to make. I think it can seem sometimes, and I know there's a characterization of the homeschooler as a somewhat self-indulgent family who can do this sort of thing. But this is not what you wanted. You'd much rather she was at school, the first school, being happy with that school.
Yeah, she wanted to be in school. We wanted her to be in school, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
And we really tried.
Well, Jackie, many thanks for that. And I've enjoyed listening to your story. Doesn't always necessarily work out happily, and that's all too clear in our society.
Yeah.
And I wish you and Phoebe all the best in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
And that brings to an end this episode of the Friday Morning Break with John Gibbs. My guest this week was Jackie Cornish, and she was describing the experience of choosing homeschooling for her daughter Phoebe. I don't think anyone listening to this would think it was an advertisement for homeschooling. Clearly it's been a struggle. It's very difficult. It's not something Phoebe or Jackie wanted to do. And of course, we haven't heard from the school and the schools involved, and they may see things very differently. I'm struck, though, that while things are going very well for Phoebe, and we wish her all the best in the future, there will be plenty of students who struggle in school for some of the reasons we've talked about, because they don't fit in, because the school isn't right for them, and there won't be an option of homeschooling. If you've enjoyed this discussion, and you'd like to hear it again, or you'd like to hear the many other programmes that I have recorded and have been recorded by the other presenters on Teachers Talk Radio, you can find them on the Teachers Talk Radio site, and you can find this episode again on Spotify and multiple other platforms. Join me again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.